The chair recognizes Representative from Portland, Representative Moonen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I present a House resolution and move its adoption and wish to speak to my motion.
The representative from Portland, Representative Moonen, has presented a House resolution and moves its adoption. The clerk will read the House resolution.
Item 4-1 is House Resolution Number 1, presented by the representative from Portland, Representative Moonen. State of Maine, the year of our Lord, 2025. House resolution relating to the censure of Representative Laurel Libby of Auburn by the Maine House of Representatives. Whereas, on or about February 17, 2025, Representative Laurel Libby of Auburn posted on her Facebook page photos of a high school athlete, a minor, who won a girls' track championship this year. And whereas, in that same post, Representative Libby identified the student athlete by name and shared pictures showing the minor in an athletic uniform with the school name clearly legible and blurred the faces of other student athletes to protect their privacy, while intentionally and deliberately leaving the named student's face exposed. And whereas accompanying the pictures, Representative Libby posted the statement criticizing the participation of transgender students in high school sports. And whereas Representative Libby's post has received national attention that she has amplified by appearing on national television and radio broadcasts to discuss. And whereas a recent study from the Williams Institute at UCLA found that transgender people are over 4 times more likely to be victims of violence. And whereas numerous replies to Representative Libby's post suggested that harm should come to the young athlete. And whereas Representative Libby's post named the minor and used photos of the minor without the minor's consent in an effort to advance her political agenda. And whereas when it was brought to her attention that her post may endanger the minor, Representative Libby refused to take down the post and instead continued to bring media attention to the minor. And whereas it is a basic tenet of politics and good moral character that children should not be targeted by adult politicians, especially when that targeting could result in serious harm. And whereas the school district, as a result of Representative Libby's actions, has had to increase security at the school, causing unnecessary stress and disruption to other students, parents, teachers, and school support staff, and the entire community. And whereas the Legislative Code of Ethics expressly states that a legislator is entrusted with the security, safety, health, prosperity, respect, and general well-being of those the legislator serves and with whom the legislator serves, and that the Maine legislator will be ever mindful of the ordinary citizen who might otherwise be unrepresented and will endeavor conscientiously to pursue the highest standards of legislative conduct inside and outside the State House. And whereas, pursuant to Article 4, Part 3, Section 4 of the Constitution of Maine, which states that each House may punish its members for disorderly behavior, and pursuant to Section 561, Subsection 1 of Mason's Manual of Legislative Procedure, which states that a legislative body has the right to regulate the conduct of its members, may discipline a member as it deems appropriate, including reprimand, censure, or expulsion. The House is the judge of its own membership. And whereas the House finds the conduct of Representative Laurel Libby to be reprehensible and in direct violation of our Code of Ethics, and whereas the House finds that Representative Laurel Libby has conducted herself in a manner incompatible with her duty and responsibilities as a member of this House and the public trust and high standards incumbent in that office, now, therefore, be it resolved that we, the members of the House of Representatives of the 132nd Legislature now assembled in the first regular session, on behalf of the people we represent, take this opportunity to declare that Representative Laurel Libby should be and hereby is censured by the House of Representatives for a just cause, and be it further resolved that Representative Laurel Libby must accept full responsibility for the incident and publicly apologize to the House and to the people of the state of Maine. And be it further resolved that Representative Laurel Libby must comport herself in a manner that pursues the highest standards of legislative conduct. And be it further resolved that this resolution must be entered on the Journal of the House of Representatives.
Chair recognizes Representative from Portland, Representative Moonen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker and honorable members of the House, serving as an elected member of the House of Representatives is both a profound privilege and a solemn responsibility. In order to ensure that that responsibility is consistently upheld, every member of this chamber is required to abide by the Legislative Code of Ethics, which states that each of us must engage in civility and responsible conduct inside and outside of the State House, commensurate with the trust placed in that legislator by the electorate. It further states that every member is entrusted with the security, safety, health, prosperity, respect, and general well-being of those the legislator serves. Last week, a member of this body, the representative from Auburn, Representative Laurel Libby, created an intentionally inflammatory post on social media about a Maine high school athlete who is a minor at a recent track event, The post included photos of the student as well as the first name without their consent. The faces of other student athletes were blurred to protect their privacy, while the named student's face was deliberately left exposed. The post then went viral online and generated tens of thousands of comments, many of which suggested that harm should come to that student. When the representative from Auburn, Representative Libby, was made aware that her post could endanger the life and health of the student, she was subsequently asked to take it down, and she refused. Instead, she continued to bring national media attention to the student, callously disregarding the threats of harm and the serious concerns for their safety and well-being. These actions have made it unequivocally clear that the representative from Auburn, Representative Libby, has violated the legislative code of ethics. Recognizing the gravity of these harmful actions should not be a partisan issue, and I'm grateful that it has not been so far. Jason Savage, the executive director of the Maine Republican Party, called for those sharing Representative Libby's post to have, quote, a dose of humanity. He went on to say, quote, some of the kids that are being put in the middle of these controversies are dealing with a lot. I think if you're a young person who is struggling with identity, I don't think we need to be placing you at the center of anything and making you a focal point for an entire state or nation. I couldn't agree more. As legislators, we can have disagreements about policy. We can have disagreements about the best way to move Maine forward. But we should be able to agree on how we conduct ourselves as elected officials and on what behavior is egregious and unacceptable. The people of Maine deserve elected leaders who are held to the highest standards of conduct, leaders who treat others with decency, civility, and respect. Over the last week, the representative from Auburn, Representative Libby, has shown a deeply disturbing lack of each of these qualities, and she has irreparably broken the trust that has been placed in her as an elected official serving in this House of Representatives. This institution and all of Maine deserve better. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Chair recognizes the representative from Winter Harbor, Representative Folkingham.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I request a roll call and would like to speak.
Representative from Winter Harbor, Representative Folkingham, has requested a roll call. Sufficient number having requested a roll call is in order. The member may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, whether you agree with the representative from Auburn's post or disagree with the post, the Legislative Code of Ethics has no guidelines referring to online or social media posts. The post in question does not even violate Facebook's community standards. So, Mr. Speaker, putting that post aside, this censure motion makes a mockery of the censure process. It sets a standard that says that the majority party, when they're displeased with a social media post that upsets them, can censure a member of the minority party and by a majority vote censure them, and without them giving an apology, keep them out of the legislature. I think that does a disservice. There have only been 3 censures in the history of the state of Maine, and all 3 times those happened, it was over an incident that took place here in the State House. This would set the precedent that anywhere out there, if the majority party is upset with something that a member of the minority party does, a censure can happen and the member can be removed. Mr. Speaker, I do not think this is the road we should go down. I think this makes a mockery of it. I think that the members should think carefully before they vote on this emotionally charged issue and not vote on what their pleasure or displeasure with the post, and think about the standard that this sets for the future of this legislature. and it's a path that we don't want to go down, Mr. Speaker. Please join me in voting no on the motion.
Chair recognizes the representative from North Yarmouth, Representative Graham.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker and honorable members of the House, I stand before you in support of the pending motion. It is difficult to put into words how disheartened and disappointed I am that we are in this position today. Sharing personally identifying information online about an individual to score political points is never acceptable. But doing it to a child, it is even more harmful. This behavior, especially from an elected official, simply cannot be condoned. Over the last week, this entire situation has really hit close to home for me. My family has lived in my home for over 30 years. I am the mother of 3 of the students who graduated from that high school. My husband has taught there and coached there for many, many years. My community has demonstrated a lot of support for this impacted student and their family. And I am incredibly proud and grateful to see us come together and rally behind one of our children. But as a mother, I can't even begin to fathom what it would be like to have one of my kids thrust into the national spotlight because a politician wants to take advantage of them for their own personal gain. My heart truly goes out to the student, their family, and everyone who has had their lives turned upside down by this situation. To everyone who has had experienced threats and fear from being targeted in this manner. To all of us in this body, I want to ask one simple question as we consider this motion. How would you feel if this happened to your child? I'll ask it again. How would you feel if this happened to your child? Please keep this in mind as you take this vote today. All Maine children have a right to privacy, a right to respect, and a right to not be used for political fodder by elected officials who should be held to a higher standard of conduct. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Pending question is adoption of the House resolution. Is the House ready for the question? Chair recognizes the representative from Skowhegan, Representative Poirier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I stand in strong opposition to this motion. The good representative from Auburn has shed light on an issue that's been stewing in our state for years. Whether or not you or I would have posted something similar on social media is not in question. What we need to be asking ourselves is whether Representative Libby is afforded freedom of speech. The fact is, this youth's name and picture, similar to those used in her post, could be found easily with a simple Google search on track sites and other sports sites throughout Maine well before she posted to social media. If Representative Libby had posted the same picture, the same name, with sentiments of congratulations, would we be here doing the censure right now? I think we know the answer to that. Mr. Speaker, our state has been placing gender dysphoria on a pedestal. And these...
The member will defer. The representative from Portland has raised a point of order. Please, can the member please state his point of order?
I believe the representative from Skowhegan is delving into policy debate around gender identity and not sticking to the terms of the order, which is the conduct in question. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The chair will remind members that the order before us is related to the conduct associated with the post and not the policy issue at large. The member may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I believe her post was shedding light on this issue. This issue is about safety and fairness, and she speaks for so many people in Maine and beyond, and that's why we're seeing national attention. Mr. Speaker, I encourage you to look at the bigger picture. She's actually practicing freedom of speech and standing up for girls in Maine that are now coming out and speaking as well. They hadn't had a voice before. She's given them that voice. To admonish her for that, in my opinion, is wrong and sets a very dangerous precedent, Mr. Speaker. Pictures and names were already available and published online. So I ask you, is this actually about this post, or is it about a differing political opinion that is behind this censure? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Chair recognizes the representative from Poland, Representative Boyer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think my colleague's actions were cruel, callous, and reprehensible. I think she made an error in her judgment. I will be voting no on this censure for the reasons that the good representative from Winter Harbor brought up. I have concerns about regulating members' conduct on social media. I think the previous censures are for things that happened on this House floor, at least the last two that I was a part of last session, Mr. Speaker. I have grave concerns about regulating members' speech online, where the line is, and so I'll be voting no on this censure, but I did want to put it on the record that what she did was gross. Thank you.
Chair recognizes the representative from Freeport, Representative Sachs.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of the pending motion because my community has seen firsthand how harmful the behavior that is outlined in this resolution and the actions of my colleague here in the House can be on a child and their family. Last year, an adult in Maine viciously targeted a student in Freeport through relentless social media posts, website content, and interviews. This adult, who lived hours away from my community, posted repeatedly and negatively about this child and her family, and the resulting coverage went not only national, but international. In my discussion with the Maine Attorney General's office...
The member will defer. The chair recognizes Representative from Bridgeton, Representative Chimino, and requests what her point of order is.
I'm wondering if this is pertinent to what we're talking about as far as the censure, or if this is just, again, pontificating on some political agenda.
The chair would remind the member that the purpose of the speech must be related to the underlying matter. The member may proceed. The chair recognizes Representative from Winter Harbor, Representative Folkingham, and requests to his point of order.
Referring to the representative of Auburn as ignorant is questioning the character of the representative from Auburn.
The chair will remind members to not impugn the character of other members. The member may proceed.
Heard, Mr. Speaker, of course you may admonish me. In my discussion with the Maine Attorney General's office about that conduct, which mirrors the conduct by the representative from Auburn, doxing is the word to use to describe this behavior. It is defined, her behavior is defined, as the knowing disclosure of the personally identifying information of a person without that person's consent, and the disclosure is intended to cause, and in fact, directly or indirectly cause, things such as physical harm to that person, serious damage of property to that person, or reasonably causes fear for their own physical safety or the physical safety of a family member, friend, or loved one. I was deeply distressed to see this behavior, doxing a child, perpetrated last week by an elected official of this body. It is different than just posting a picture that is publicly available. As an editorial in the Portland Press-Herald noted just this weekend, Mr. Speaker, disagreement over policy is par for the course. Indeed, we'd be nowhere without it. Disagreement on principle is a different matter. To single out a minor for clicks in this way is reprehensible. An elected representative should know that.
The chair will ask the member to defer. The member from Bridgeton has a point of order. The member may state her point of order.
Again, I think that intent is being questioned, and how does anybody know what the good representative's intent was when she posted that?
The chair will remind members to keep their comments to the order at hand and to not try to portray the motives of other members. Member may proceed.
However, as I described, this op-ed is describing the actions of said representative, which is outlined in the order.
The member may proceed.
To double down on such a decision, again quoting the op-ed regarding this representative's actions, on such a decision, once its callousness has been revealed to you, that's more reprehensible again, unquote. These are my words, Mr. Speaker. It is unequivocally clear that a line was crossed. On this principle, and I am fine setting this precedent, this body should not disagree that targeting minors, doxing children is wrong, plain and simple. This body should say so loudly with one voice and without reservation and support the pending motion. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Chair recognizes Representative from Auburn, Representative Libby.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My speech does include some background to this post and the events thereafter, so I hope I will not be silenced during the middle of my speech. Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House, over the last 6 years, the Chief Executive and legislative Democrats have done as they pleased, ignoring the will of the Maine people.
The member will defer. The chair will recognize the representative from Portland, Representative Moonen, and inquire to his point of order.
The remarks thus far bear no resemblance whatsoever to the words in this order, Mr. Speaker.
The chair will remind the member to keep the comments to the order at hand.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The member may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The order at hand is to silence me, censure me, and my comments are regarding silencing. So I think they're quite pertinent. If I may proceed. Whether it was the handling of COVID, passing a late-term abortion bill...
The member will defer. The chair will remind the member that the order before us is related to a post that the member made on Facebook related to a minor and their photo being shared on Facebook. I don't recall the post having anything to do with the pandemic or the chief executive. So the member may want to, the chair may provide the member with the courtesy of coming back to her when she has her remarks refined to not include comments about things that are not before the body. The member will state his point of order.
Mr. Speaker, I think we all agree that this is a serious order and a serious issue, censuring our colleague, and I would request just a little latitude for the member to defend themselves.
The chair is trying to provide the latitude for the member to provide remarks. If I have to hold this entire body to a standard related to the comments at hand, which has been requested by members on this side already related to comments, the member will also be held to that standard. The member may proceed.
I'll fast forward. Let me paint the picture for you, Mr. Speaker. Last Monday, Maine girls walked into an arena, excited to compete in the state championship for pole vault. What an honor. After years of hard work, that hard work pays off to be competing at this level. But that excitement was quickly dashed as they learned that there was a biological male participating and that their hard work didn't matter. Can you imagine, just for a minute, their extreme disappointment and their sense of betrayal? Can you imagine trying to put your best foot forward, but knowing that the outcome was already predetermined by natural biological advantages?
The member will defer. Is the member attempting to provide comment about why the member was justified in posting a photo of a minor?
The speaker is not justifying, no, explaining the silencing of Maine girls, the canceling of girls' sports.
The member will defer. The chair recognizes the representative from Portland, Representative Moonen, and inquires as to his point of order.
The representative is trying to make this a policy debate. There is legislation pending on that policy that is not currently on the floor of the House. And I request that you direct her to restrict her comments to the order that is on the floor of the House.
The chair will remind the member again. The resolution that's before us is related to whether or not the posting of a photo of a minor is appropriate conduct for a member of this body. The member may proceed, but the member is beginning to skate on thin ice as it relates to the course of debate in this chamber. The member may proceed.
I'm not surprised, Mr. Speaker. I'm not surprised. Let me, since I don't know how many more sentences I'll be allowed to speak, let me put this. Boys participating in girls' sports is not fair.
The House will be at ease. Leadership approach the well. Chair recognizes the representative from Auburn, Representative Libby.
Mr. Speaker, the state championship was a public event. The individual in question determined of his own free will to participate, and his photos are posted publicly on multiple websites. The reason that folks are upset about this post is that it exposed truth, and now people are mad that indeed, after being told that this is not happening and it doesn't matter, that there are boys participating in girls' sports. Boys taking the place of girls.
The chair would remind the member, I think we just had a pause in the course of this debate for comments that were exactly like the comments that are being made now. I would ask the member to try to get back to a course of debate that was that is similar to what members on her side of the aisle had already spoken to as it relates to whether or not it is appropriate to post photos of a child on Facebook as part of a political post. The member may proceed.
The day after I made my post, the post of photos of an individual who had multiple photos online with their name on them on multiple websites. You emailed and called me to ask that I take my post down. I expected that. After all, when you shine a spotlight on the truth, you can expect opposition. Mr. Speaker, may I finish? It is becoming abundantly clear Maine girls will not get fairness in Maine. And when the woke left can't silence women, they cancel them.
The representative will defer. The chair recognizes the representative from Augusta, Representative Bergio.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I've only been an elected state representative for a couple of years now, but in my prior life, I was a city manager, a very public official for 40 years. In that time, I learned, sometimes painfully, how being the subject of controversial media attention, including and maybe especially social media, can be a deeply upsetting experience for anyone, as well as for their families. It's tough to endure such harsh and aggressive treatment, even as a mature, battle-hardened professional.
The member will defer. The chair is familiar with the point of order. The chair will remind the member to keep his comments related to the post at hand and the order that's before us related to the conduct of the representative from Auburn. The member may proceed.
Apologies. It can be devastating and psychologically irreparable for a young person, especially a child who might be coping with challenges of being somehow different. Wherever I have served in public life, the unwritten but universal rule that, quote, we leave the kids out of it, close quote, has been the norm. Of any place, that should be the case in Maine. I respect that the issue of transgender kids participating in interscholastic sports can be complex, that good people can see it differently, and that the associated policy questions are legitimate. But I draw the line at making innocent minors the subject, or for that matter, the object of the debate. No child designed these rules, and no child deserves to be targeted by any adults who are upset about them. Keep the kids out of it is a good principle.
The member will defer. The member may state his point of order.
I just need a little clarification on our colleague. Is he making a floor speech, or is this a point of order that he generated?
No, he's making a floor speech.
She was already speaking.
Excuse me?
She was speaking.
The representative from Auburn had finished her speech.
Well, didn't sound like. Thank you, Mr.
Member may proceed.
Keep the kids out of it is a good principle. And before social media coarsened our civic discourse, it was pretty much universally accepted. A determined effort to ignore or undermine that principle is unacceptable, and it does need to be condemned. I support the resolve.
Chair recognizes the representative from Winter Harbor, Representative Folkingham. Chair recognizes the representative from Newport, Representative Fredette.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, this is a solemn occasion. Censure of a person in this body is a significant and a substantial event. And as I look at this issue and I grapple with the different issues at stake, right to privacy, right to free speech, the right of a public official to talk about policy. The world that we live in today is difficult. Snapchat, LinkedIn, Facebook, email. And when we talk about the conduct of the good representative from Auburn, we have to look at it in the world that we live in today. Because the world we live in today was not the world that we lived in 25 years ago. And when this body seeks to establish guidelines and standards on rights and interests, it becomes difficult. Because what is the right to privacy? Who has the right to privacy? Does a minor child have a right to privacy? We have all sought to be elected to this body. And as such, Mr. Speaker, you give up a certain amount of privacy because you have chosen to become a public person. Someone in this body may have a different right to privacy than someone who is the President of the United States. And I would argue that it's a matter of degree. If somebody's a selectman in their town, a state representative. But the issue is that we have a right to privacy, we have a right to free speech, and when we have these competing issues, it's tough to get our arms around them. And so, as I look at this issue today, and I felt compelled to speak about this as an attorney, as a father, as a public figure, and as someone who cares about our great state of the state of Maine. And so when I look at this issue today, and I'm looking for guidance, and I look at the proposed order on censure, and I would like to read one paragraph that, Mr. Speaker, on page 2, the 5th paragraph. It talks, whereas pursuant to Article 4, Part 3, Section 4 of the Constitution of Maine, which states that each House may, quote, punish its members for disorderly behavior, unquote, and punish to Section 561, subsection 1 of Mason's Manual of Legislative Procedures, which states that, quote, a legislative body has the right to regulate the conduct of its members and may discipline a member as it deems appropriate, including reprimand, censure, or expulsion. That's the Constitution of the state of Maine. And, Mr. Speaker, I would submit that that is the highest order in our state in terms of the standards that we have to live up to. Not House rules, not state statute, the state Constitution. And so when I look at this issue before me today, Mr. Speaker, I look at it and I will say again, quote, a legislative body has a right to regulate the conduct of its members. And I agree with that, Mr. Speaker. But regulating free speech is not an easy issue. It's not an easy subject. Because as lawyers on the other side would understand, there's the word and in there. And it says, and may discipline a member of its as it deems appropriate, including reprimand, censure, or expulsion. So there are two standards in that I think are important, Mr. Speaker. There is the conduct, and then there is the question of discipline. And I think in order to vote in the affirmative on this, you have to agree in regards to the conduct of what the good representative from Auburn did and whether or not she should be disciplined. Now, I will say this, Mr. Speaker. I've lived in this state my entire life. Grew up in a small town up in northern Maine, poor, French kid, first in my family to go to college. I know what it felt like to be picked on. I know what it felt like to be bullied. So when we're talking about conduct, I take that personal. And I take it more personal when we're talking about children. I have chosen to be state representative. My children, my stepchildren, my grandson have not made that choice. They are not part of the public debate. They should not be on Facebook spread around as Ken Fredette's children or son or whatever. If we're talking about conduct in this body, no, we should not be using photos, images, statements of somebody else's children to make a point. I think that's dead wrong. And it shakes me to think that we would do that. So in regards to the issue before this body tonight, and I look at the conduct, I say the conduct is wrong. I then look at the word and I look at whether or not the member should be disciplined. And that's a much more difficult question for me to answer in the world of Facebook and Twitter and Fox News and Max News and whatever it is today, Mr. Speaker, where one person says one thing and it blows up, goes all over the world. Now, I don't know what the good representative from Auburn did or didn't do in terms of how did she get 10,000? I don't know how she got 10,000 posts. It's just not. But I do know that we live in a world today where if you say one thing or do one thing, something can blow up. This certainly blew up. Now, whether or not I can attribute the conduct and the discipline to the good representative from Auburn, I'm not sure that I can, given the world that we live in today. This censure order talks about her conduct and what it has done to this minor child. I think children have a difficult world to live in today, Mr. Speaker. That thing right there, that phone.
The member will defer. The chair will remind members to not use props during the course of debate. The member may proceed.
But children have enough on their plates today without any concern that they may become some sort of political football in a political debate. If there should be anything that should come out of this debate tonight, it should that be everybody in this body should understand. The use of any pictures of minors, reference to minors, children, I understand we can make policy debates. I think that's important. But specifics in regards to photographs, comments, that's out of bounds. We ought to be able to make that conduct and agree that that conduct is wrong. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Chair recognizes the representative from Belfast, Representative Dodge.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of the pending motion. I rise today not only as the state representative for Belfast, Belmont, and Northport, but also as a retired teacher with 31 years' experience as a music educator in Maine's public schools. As an educator, the well-being and safety of my students was integral. It was essential that my classroom provided students with a safe and supportive learning environment. As an educator, I recognize that the privacy of students is essential too. The recent actions of my colleague from Auburn are shocking. These actions put a target on the back of a vulnerable student, of a minor. Her choice to post photos and identifying information without the minor's consent and her refusal to remove them were directed toward a young human being with feelings, a human being deserving of protection. The representative posted a narrative with more information than just a published photo. These actions most certainly disrupted the learning environment for that student and students at that school, and I suspect have been beyond upsetting for the student's parents and family. I believe it is beyond egregious. I'd like to note, Mr. Speaker, that the representative from Auburn had the forethought to blur the faces of some of the student athletes in the social media post, but not this athlete. The actions of the representative from Auburn have also disrupted the work of teachers and school staff, teachers who already work around a myriad of distractions vying for the attention of teenagers. The representative's actions also made it necessary for the school district's superintendent to issue a letter to parents to let them know that the local police department would be increasing their presence when students return to school from vacation this week. Parents do not expect that the actions of a legislator could jeopardize the safety of their kids. It is unconscionable for a member of this body to publicly target a school student for any reason. A person does not need to spend 3 decades in a classroom to know that it is wrong for an elected official to take advantage of a student, a minor, for what appears to be for her own political gain. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Chair recognizes the representative from Cumberland, Representative Mitchell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise today not only as the state representative from Cumberland, Long Island, and Shebig. I rise as a teacher with more than 30 years of experience in Maine public schools, and I rise as a parent myself. Mr. Speaker, I am appalled that a child in our great state has been used as a political pawn by a member of this esteemed body. I am ashamed, Mr. Speaker, that a child within my school community, my town, has faced public threats and ridicule from adults due to the actions of one of our colleagues in this very body. I am disappointed, Mr. Speaker, that when given the chance to reverse course and take down the social media post in question, the representative from Auburn instead chose to double down. I believe, and many of my constituents have told me that they believe it is morally and ethically wrong, Mr. Speaker, to use children for one's own political gain. The students at our school in my community are saying they just want to have a normal day and go back to school. They were excited to see their friends again after break, and they don't want all this attention from adults. You know teenagers. We were all teenagers once. They want to be left alone, not to be singled out. Teenagers are very squirmish that way. I've taught teens for years. They know if one is picked on, the others are easy targets.
Chair recognizes Representative Woodson and inquires to his point of order. Representative from Waterboro and inquires as to his point of order.
We've had many interruptions there, point of orders, and you said stick to what the censure is. And we have a litany of experiences, which in the latest speaker, I question how it pertains pertinently to this censure.
The chair would advise the member that the member speaking is from the community and speaking to the impact on students in the school district where the student who's subject of this order attends. The member may proceed.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, the kids just want to hang out with their friends, and they want to check out what each other did on break. They do not appreciate having trucks from national news outlets outside their school, or all the extra police around. Mr. Speaker, this generation of kids is particularly sensitive about security, or the lack of it. We adults...
The member will defer. The chair would inquire as to the point of order from the representative from Bridgeton.
Mr. Speaker, this is sounding more like a psychology class as opposed to an actual speech about the censure itself.
Again, the chair just notified the body that the member is speaking to the impact at the school in which the student whose photo was posted on Facebook is experiencing. The order speaks to the potential harm caused to the student, and I think the member is speaking to that. The member is in order. The member may proceed.
Thank you. We adults need to be keenly aware of how the public threats stemming from the representative from Auburn's social media posts are victimizing and harming all of our children. No community is immune, not mine, not yours. A lot of parents in Cumberland are completely on edge. They have messaged me, they've talked to me, they've called me. They want so badly to help out their kids, to protect them. They wanted to make signs of support. They wanted to bring the students comfort cookies. But the students, again, they didn't want the attention. Mr. Speaker, these kids, they just want to be left alone to be kids. The principal of the high school reiterated in a letter to the parents over the weekend that the goal of the school has always been to provide a safe, welcoming, and productive learning environment. He encouraged the community to come together to support everyone in the community. The representative from Auburn's actions have directly harmed the school, the families, and our children in my community. And it's all happening because one person, an adult, a legislator, chose to use a child to score political points. Mr. Speaker, many things are complicated, especially here in this building. This is not complicated. You would not want this to happen to your child in your community. Mr. Speaker, I believe we need to protect everyone, especially the children, from very harmful actions like these. The House of Representatives has a responsibility to condemn this conduct. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Pending question is adoption of the House resolution. Is the House ready for the question? Chair will open the vote. Chair recognizes the representative from Waterbury, Representative Whitson.
For my own clarification, this order of censure that we're going to be voting on here, I question how is it going to affect me when I leave this body and a private citizen? Is this body going to dictate what I do outside in my own life? How is it? I need an answer before I vote. I didn't want a threat hanging over my head that I may post something on Facebook or make a statement that happens to offend somebody. We all know there's enough issues out there that offend somebody. So does this vote, this censure, affect myself and everyone else as a private citizen once we're outside? If it does, I want an honest and legal answer.
Is the member posing a question to the chair? Is the member posing a question to the chair?
To the chair and everyone here.
The chair would advise the member. The representative has been in this building for many years, as have I. And in the 8 years I served previously, never has there been a censure order brought forward because someone has posted something that someone disagreed with. I've never seen it. The question at hand is, will any of the members, if this should pass, go forth and post photos of minors as part of political fodder? Because that's never happened in the 8 years I served here previously. So I think it will be very clear that the standard is to not post photos of minors as part of political fodder should this resolution succeed.
That is not my question.
The member will defer. The chair did not recognize the member. Would the member like to restate his point of order or his question?
No.
Pending question is adoption of the House resolution. Is the House ready for the question? Chair recognizes representative from Chelsea, Representative Lemelin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll be brief. I just want to make clarification on a couple things that I heard. One was the term doxing. The term doxing means the action or process of searching for and publishing private or identifying information about a particular individual on the internet with malice, maliciously. Malicious means the intent to do harm. People, it seems to me that people are assuming things. Because when I spoke to the representative from Auburn about this situation, she never indicated to me in any way, shape, or form that her intent was to do harm. She indicated that her intent was to bring to light a situation in which she wanted the Maine people to have clarity on. That's not malice. So there was no malice, nothing done intentionally to do harm to this young man. None. And that's what we're censuring her for. I think people maybe should have thought about approaching the good representative, sitting down and talking to her before we do a lynching.
The member will defer. The member may proceed.
The second thing I want to bring up is this. It seems to me like there's doublespeak here. The reason is multiple people, including you, Mr. Speaker, have indicated that the good representative from Auburn is doing this specifically for political gain. I don't understand that. Here's why. Everybody has indicated that her actions are reprehensible. If her actions are so reprehensible, then that is called political suicide, not political gain. So if we're censuring her for doing an action, for politically suiciding herself, then okay, I get it. But if we're moving forward because she is trying to get political gain, that's impossible. Because everybody in this chamber has indicated during their speeches that this is political suicide. It's a horrible thing. That's not political gain, Mr. Speaker. So the two things I want to clarify, and I'm going to say them one more time, is I spoke. I did what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to sit down. This is in the Bible. You and I are both Catholics. You know what I'm about to tell you. It says sit down with the person and have a discussion with them. Let's find out what went on here. Let's have a talk first. Give the person a chance to talk. That's not what happened here. This representative had no chance at all. She got blindsided. We're not in this chamber to do that. We should table this motion, Mr. Speaker, and give everybody a chance, including you, to sit down with the young lady and have a talk. Because her intent was not to do harm. That was accidental. People can giggle all they want, Mr. Speaker.
The House will be in order. The member may proceed.
But I spoke to the representative from Auburn. She wasn't BSing me. She has no reason to. I just asked her privately what's going on. And I am telling you there was no intent to do harm. And I wish everybody else would have done due diligence and treat her like a human being. Because what we're doing here today is no different than what we're accusing her of doing. Just because she's an adult, she doesn't have the right? Why? She has the right to be heard. She can't be heard on the House floor, but she should have been heard in your office or wherever. She wasn't given a chance, Mr. Speaker. That's shameful. We should all be ashamed here. Point of order. Thank you.
The House will be in order. The chair would inform the member that the chair spoke to the representative on Monday of last week on the phone. She had her chance. Is the House ready for the question? Chair, open the vote. Sergeant Ramos will secure the chamber. There are 2 members in their seats who have not yet voted. There's 1 member in his seat who has not yet voted. Have all now voted? Chair will close the vote. Clerk will untold. Chair will announce the vote. 75 having voted in the affirmative and 70 in the negative. The motion prevails. Chair would call the representative from Auburn, Representative Libby, to the well of the House. Representative Libby, the Legislative Code of Ethics states that to work well, government requires a bond of trust and respect between citizens and their legislators. With such a trust, the code continues, quote, high moral and ethical standards producing the public's confidence should be observed, end quote. Sharing images of kids online without their consent is a clear violation of that trust. There is a time and place. The chair would inform the member that recording is against the House rules. Sharing images of kids online without their consent is a clear violation of that trust. There is a time and place for policy debates. That time and place will never be a social media post attacking a Maine student. The code continues, quote, a Maine legislator is charged with civility and responsible conduct inside and outside of the State House, commensurate with the trust placed in that legislator by the electorate. I urge you, and indeed every member of this body, to recommit to keeping kids out of the political fray, as has long been observed in both our state and federal politic. Maine kids and all Maine people deserve better. I will conclude with this last reminder from the Legislative Code of Ethics. Quote, the Maine legislator will be ever mindful of the ordinary citizen who might otherwise be unrepresented and will endeavor conscientiously to pursue the highest standards of legislative code conduct inside and outside of the State House. The member will have an opportunity to provide an apology to this body and to the public. We will be at ease should the member wish to produce an apology and submit it to the public record. We will be at ease until we reconvene. The chair understands that the member does not intend to submit an apology to the body.
That is correct.
The member will be in violation of House Rule 401, Part 11. The member will not be able to cast a vote or speak on the floor until the member has come back into compliance with House Rule 401, Part 11. The member may return to her seat. Is there objection to all matters having acted on being sent forth with? Hearing none, order sent forth with. The chair understands that the representative from Lowell, Representative McIntyre, moves the House stand adjourned until Tuesday, March 4th, 2025 at 10 o'clock in the morning, or until the call of the Speaker of the House and the President of the Senate, respectively, pursuant to the joint order. The chair recognizes the representative from Skowhegan, Representative Poirier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I was hitting the button as you were speaking. Mr. Speaker, I just wish to pose a question through the chair.
The member may proceed.
I would like clarification for other members of the body who may have reposted Representative Libby's social media posts. Do we expect censures to come forth on them as well?
I'm not aware of any other censures.
Thank you.
pursuant to the joint order, in honor and lasting tribute to the memory of Bruce Martin Curran of Lowell, William S. Buffington of South Paris, Barbara Hogate of Cornville, Alvin Hall of Whiting, and Andrew Quaid of Lewiston. Is this the pleasure of the House? It's a vote.